It started with a glass of orange juice. "Excuse me, what do you mean there's an extra charge for juice? I thought breakfast was included." The man's tone was casual, but just sharp enough to raise eyebrows. Elliot Zayn paused, his fork suspended, halfway between plate and mouth, as if that single sentence had pierced the morning's calm like a crack through glass. The breakfast buffet on the 12th floor was exactly as he'd designed it. Floor-to-ceiling windows framing the bay. White, tablecloths pressed to perfection, soft jazz humming through hidden speakers. It looked like elegance. It felt like legacy. This was the kind of place his father had dreamed of 26 years ago. Back then, it was one small hotel with leaky pipes and paper-thin walls. Now, 14 properties spanned the country, a name that meant something in the travel world. A name Elliot had worked to preserve, on spreadsheets, in boardrooms, and expansion memos. But lately, something had begun to shift, and not in a way he liked. Whispers in customer reviews, complaints about rude staff, confusing fees, and a lack of care. He'd brushed them off at first. Every chain has its bad days. But the noise didn't fade. If anything, it got louder, and he knew, if you want to hear the truth, you have to walk into it. So here he was, not as Elliot Zayn, CEO and heir to a hospitality empire, but as Josh Raymond, solo traveler, fleece hoodie, 2-day stubble, and a nondescript booking made online with no fanfare. He checked in anonymously. No flags were raised. No extra smiles offered. Good. That was the point. Now, seated quietly in a corner booth with eggs growing cold, he watched the scene unfold like a director behind the curtain. The hostess, a woman in her late 20s with a name tag that read, Isa, was gently explaining to the guest, "The buffet includes only the food, sir. Drinks, even coffee and juice, are separate unless you're on the premium package." But the check-in desk said breakfast was included. The man pushed back. "I understand. It's a newer policy," Isa replied with the quiet tone of someone who'd said it too many times and never once believed it herself. "Management says we have to enforce it." Elliot frowned. He scanned the room. The sign at the buffet didn't mention drinks. The small menu card on each table simply read, "Breakfast included." Included, not partially, not conditionally included. He flagged down a young waiter, maybe 21, awkward in his approach. "Quick question," Elliot asked. "Does breakfast include drinks?" The waiter blinked, hesitated. Sorta. Like, if you booked premium through the app, yeah. Otherwise, it's $2.99 for juice or coffee." Elliot nodded slowly and let him go. But his stomach sank. Not because of the upcharge, because of the pattern, the inconsistency, the quiet shame on Isa's face, the awkward pause from the server, the older man storming out of the restaurant muttering under his breath. Something was wrong. Not just a policy hiccup, something deeper. He stood, crossed the room, and paused behind a narrow podium where the floor manager, a man in his mid-40s with crossed arms and cold eyes, was whispering to a young busboy. "If they ask about drinks," the manager said, voice low, "just say it's included and charge the room anyway. Most don't check. If they notice, say it's a system glitch." The kid hesitated. "You want me to lie to them?" "Don't be dramatic," the manager snapped. "It's how we hit our goals. Now clear table 10. Elliot felt his pulse in his throat. That was it. No more secondhand reports. No more corporate filters. This wasn't a glitch. It was a scheme, and he had just found the source. Elliot showed up before sunrise the next morning. No grand entrance, just a man in the same hoodie, same faded jeans, walking through the hotel lobby like any other early riser looking for coffee. But this time, he wasn't just listening. He was watching. Every sigh, every glance, every crack in the foundation. The breakfast area was still half dark when he arrived. Only a few early birds sipping coffee. And Isa, there she was again. Same warm smile, same tired eyes. She stood at the host stand, flipping through the day's seating chart. When she saw him, she nodded. "Good morning, sir. Table for one?" Yeah, thanks, he replied softly. She led him to a corner booth near the windows. As he slid into the seat, he leaned in slightly. Hey, quick question. She tilted her head, curious. That drink thing, do you get a lot of complaints? Issa's smile faltered. She looked down, almost ashamed. Too many, she said quietly. It's honestly the worst part of my job right now. How often do people react badly? Elliot pressed gently. Issa exhaled through her nose. Last week, a woman cried at this table. She was on vacation with her husband, said it was their last trip before he started chemo. She didn't know about the fee. The bill came out $30 more than she expected. Issa paused. She just broke down. Elliot stared at her, shaken. You told your manager? He asked. Rick? She nodded bitterly. Yeah, I told him exactly what happened. What did he say? Issa met his eyes. He said, not my problem. Policy is policy. Elliot looked down at the table. His fingers curled slightly, against the linen. I almost quit that day, she added. Her voice was quiet now, brittle around the edges. I love this job. Or I used to. I liked making people feel welcome. But lately, it's like I'm the one lying to them. He nodded slowly. That pain in her voice. That wasn't burnout. That was betrayal. Thanks for being honest with me, he said. Issa hesitated. You're not really just a guest, are you? Elliot smiled faintly. Not exactly. Before she could ask more, the doors swung open and Rick walked in, clapping his hands together like he was calling actors to a set. All right, team, let's keep it tight this morning. No slip-ups. And remember, drinks are charged unless they complain. Issa froze mid-step. Elliot stood, calm, every move deliberate. Rick, he called. Rick turned, confused. Do I know you? Elliot pulled off the hoodie. The room fell still. No, you don't, he said, voice steady. I'm Elliot Zayn. I own this hotel. The color drained from Rick's face. Issa gasped behind him, hand flying to her chest. We need to talk. Now. Rick didn't argue. He led Elliot through the back hall, past the clanging of pans and steam hissing from the industrial dish pit. They slipped through a door marked staff only into a narrow office cluttered with paper, shift schedules, and a half-eaten sandwich that reeked of abandonment. Elliot didn't sit. Rick folded his arms. I assume this is about the juice thing, Rick said, trying to sound composed. It's about how you're running this hotel, Elliot replied. His tone didn't rise, but it was unmistakably final. The drink charges are only one symptom. Rick's eyes flicked to the security monitor behind Elliot. I don't know what you've heard, but we hit our numbers. Every quarter. Because you lie to guests and bully your staff, Elliot cut in. Rick shrugged. I manage operations. If comms miss a signage update, that's not my fault. I don't micromanage every check-in. You trained a busboy to deceive people, Elliot said, stepping forward. You told him to charge without consent. That's not management, that's manipulation. Rick's jaw clenched, but he stayed quiet. Do you take any responsibility for the guest who left crying? I didn't interact with her. You didn't need to. Your policies did. A long silence. The smell of burnt coffee in the air made it feel like the room was suffocating. You've created a culture where dishonesty is normal, Elliot said, his voice like steel. That ends today. Rick narrowed his eyes. So what? You're going to write me up? Elliot shook his head. You're dismissed. Effective immediately. Rick's mouth opened, but before he could get a word out, Elliot continued. You've been cutting corners to hit numbers. At the cost of your team, at the cost of trust. That's not leadership, that's cowardice. Rick didn't speak. He didn't defend. He just looked down. Elliot turned and left without another word. Back on the floor, the breakfast rush had begun. The energy was different now, tense, uncertain. Issa was helping an elderly couple find a table, Her shoulders squared like she was holding something in. When Elliot approached, she glanced at him. "I just let Rick go," he said. She blinked. "Seriously?" He nodded. "That's not what this company stands for, and I need help fixing it." Issa looked stunned. "What kind of help?" "You know this place, you understand its rhythm. Temporarily, I want you overseeing front of house, not as a manager but as a point person." Her eyes widened. "I'm not trained for that. You've already been doing it." She hesitated, then slowly nodded. "I'll do my best. That's all I ask." As they walked back toward the kitchen, Elliot's eyes landed on a skinny teenage boy wiping down a table near the windows. He looked barely 15, exhausted, shirt hanging off his frame. His eyes kept drifting to the clock. Elliot approached. "Hey, what's your name?" "Mason," the boy said quietly. "You working the breakfast shift?" "Yeah, since 5. You look tired." "I had school yesterday, then dinner shift, then this." Elliot frowned. "How many hours are you working this week?" Mason hesitated. "I think 32. You in high school?" He nodded. "I try to do homework after I get home, but sometimes I fall asleep." Elliot crouched so they were eye level. "You the only one doing both shifts?" "Usually. The other guy quit last month." "Did you ever tell anyone this was too much?" "Tried. Rick said I could give up hours if I didn't want my paycheck." Elliot stood, jaw tight. "Go take a break now." Mason blinked, confused. "What?" "I'll cover your tables, get some water, sit down." The boy stared, then nodded slowly, retreating to the break room like he didn't quite believe what had just happened. Elliot grabbed a rag, wiped a table, and looked out over the restaurant. He wasn't furious. He was disappointed. And disappointment runs deeper. By the next morning, Elliot wasn't just watching anymore, he was in uniform. A borrowed black-collared shirt, slacks that didn't quite fit, and an apron tied too tightly around his waist. He didn't look like a CEO. He looked like staff. That was the point. The sun had barely risen, but the hotel was already stirring. Issa was the first to arrive, clipboard in hand, scanning the floor plan like a field medic triaging a war zone. "We're still short 2 servers," she said, brushing hair out of her face. "And we're down a dishwasher. Table 9's rack is still in the back. We can't reset until it's cleared." "I'll handle it," Elliot said simply, already moving. The kitchen was hot, humid, and humming. Steam fogged the edges of the metal counters. The sharp tang of lemon cleaner stung his nose. And there, hunched over a tray, was Mason, shoulders tight, hands raw from scrubbing. Elliot didn't say a word. He grabbed gloves, rolled up his sleeves, and joined him. Tray after tray, he worked in silence. Mason glanced over at him after a few minutes. "Did someone quit?" the boy asked. "No," Elliot said, loading another rack. "We're just catching up." Mason nodded. "You're not like Rick." Elliot offered a tight smile. "Let's just say I prefer working beside people, not over them." They didn't need to talk more. The kid needed space, not speeches. By 8 a.m., the dining room was buzzing. Guests asked for coffee refills. Heat trays ran low. A family circled near the host stand, unsure where to sit. Issa moved like a conductor, with no orchestra. Every step precise, every second borrowed. Elliot stepped out from the kitchen and straight into the flow. He grabbed a carafe and started pouring coffee. Cleared dishes, replaced napkins. When guests asked questions, he answered them, calmly, clearly, confidently. A man at table 4 asked about the juice policy. Elliot didn't flinch. "No extra charge. That policy's changed as of this morning." He placed a fresh sign by the buffet himself. "All drinks included. No added charges. Thank you for dining with us." A few guests took photos of it. One woman smiled and whispered, "Finally." But not everyone welcomed the change. At around 9:30, Elliot caught a dispute unfolding near the buffet. A sharply dressed woman stood stiff with anger, arms crossed, facing down a server in a maroon shirt. Derek, one of the newer hires. Asked the hostess if I could bring this to my room, the woman said, pointing at her plate. She said yes. She was wrong, Derek snapped. You can eat here or pay the takeaway fee. You didn't ask. There's no sign about that, the guest said, and you don't get to change the rules mid-meal. You're just not listening, Derek said coldly. Elliot moved fast. Is there a problem? Derek didn't hesitate. She's trying to take food without paying for it. I wasn't walking out, the woman shot back. I was grabbing my laptop. Elliot turned to Derek. Did you see her leave with anything? No, Derek replied, jaw tight. Then we don't accuse guests. Ever. But she's… No. Elliot's voice dropped. You confirm, you clarify, you assist. That's it. She's bending the rules. There are no rules posted, and we don't run the floor on assumptions. Elliot turned to the guest. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. Please enjoy your meal however you prefer. She nodded stiffly, picked up her plate, and walked back to her table. Derek muttered something under his breath. What was that? Elliot asked. Nothing, Derek said, avoiding eye contact. Step into the hallway. They moved into the side corridor, just out of hearing range. You've been here, what, 4 weeks? Elliot asked. Just over a month. How many guests have you had issues with? I don't know. 3? 4? That's 4 too many. Derek folded his arms. Some people don't follow instructions. They act entitled. They expect service, Elliot replied. Your job is to provide it, not challenge them. If they disrespect me, I'm not just going to smile and take it. You are. That's the job. You don't decide who deserves respect based on your mood. Derek shook his head. So, I'm supposed to just roll over? No, you're supposed to be a professional. Elliot paused. I've watched you. You speak to guests like they're inconveniencing you. You cut off Issa twice during pre-shift and you ignored a waving table for 10 straight minutes. They weren't in my section. That's not an excuse. Derek said nothing. Not because he was ashamed, but because he didn't care. This isn't going to work, Elliot said. You're done here. Derek scoffed. Seriously? Over a plate of eggs? No. Over your attitude. He didn't wait for a reply. Derek walked out without a word. Elliot returned to the floor. Issa was resetting tables with a young server named Kyle. He looked barely out of college, fast on his feet but nervously glancing at the lobby where guests were beginning to pile up. Is it always this busy on Thursdays? Kyle asked. Not. Usually, Elliot said. But we've got 2 tour groups arriving at once. System flagged them for the same time slot. Should we tell them to wait? Only if you want to start the day with more complaints. Elliot grabbed menus. I'll seat the next 5. You clear section 2. Kyle nodded and ran. Over the next hour, Elliot worked the room like he'd been there for years. He helped a guest with a nut allergy find safe options. Flagged maintenance when a ceiling light flickered dangerously above table 3. Reset chairs. Refilled glasses. Stepped behind the juice station to keep up with demand. When the rush finally died down, he gathered the floor team in the back hallway. I know this morning was rough, he began. But I saw how you handled it, thank you. A tall server with a heavy accent raised her hand. Are we in trouble? No, Elliot said. But I'm staying the rest of the week. We're fixing this. Together. A dishwasher leaned on the wall, arms crossed. You really the owner? Elliot nodded. I am, and I've been out of touch. That ends today. Another voice mumbled. You're not like him. Elliot didn't ask who they meant. He already knew. I shouldn't have needed to come undercover to find the truth. But I'm here now. And we're not waiting on corporate to fix it. We take care of each other. Starting now. Nods rippled through the group. Later, Elliot made his way to the front desk. Lee, the reservation clerk, barely looked up as she clicked through the screen. A red flash blinked on her monitor. What was that? Elliot asked. Overbooked, she said softly. Again. How often does that happen? Every weekend. Rick used to override the limits and sell extra rooms. Said we'd figure it out later. What happens to guests when there's no room? We shuttle them somewhere else. But sometimes they wait hours. They get compensated? Only if they ask. Elliot leaned in. Starting today, no more overbooking, and if we mess up, we pay, no negotiation. Lee paused. Thanks. And take your break, he added. I'll cover the desk. By evening, Elliot had shadowed nearly every team on the property. He helped housekeeping turn over late checkouts, stocked napkins, cleaned trays, and every task uncovered something else. Broken carts, worn-out equipment, missing tools, a vendor, unpaid for over a month. Staff scheduled to the brink of collapse. He stood on the roof that night, wind brushing against his collar, city lights glowing below. He flipped open his notebook. Staff names, system failures, promises. This wasn't just a broken hotel. It was a neglected one. And now, finally someone was listening. By Friday morning, the hotel had shifted. Not completely. There were still too few hands, still too many broken systems. But the weight in the air felt different. Lighter, focused, hopeful. Elliot stood just outside the staff entrance, clipboard in hand, flipping through the notes he'd gathered like a surgeon reviewing charts before a long operation. 17 system issues, 9 infrastructure failures, 4 urgent staff concerns, and 1 report that hadn't left his mind since he'd first heard it. Lisa stepped out into the chill air, sweater pulled tight around her arms. Room 621 is asking for you, she said. The guest said she saw you on the floor. Didn't want to leave without saying something. Elliot raised an eyebrow. Did she say what it was about? No, Issa replied. Only that it was important, he nodded. Can you have Mason cover the front desk for 10? Issa gave a short nod and slipped back inside. Elliot took the elevator up to the 6th floor. The hallway was quiet, carpet soft under his steps. He knocked twice. The woman who answered looked to be in her early 40s. Her suitcase was already zipped, a navy blazer neatly folded over the back of a chair. Her expression was calm, but something in her eyes told him this wasn't just a thank you. You're Mr. Zayn, she said. I am. I'm Vanessa. I stayed here this week with my daughter. She had a school competition downtown. We were supposed to be here 3 nights. Stayed 5 thanks to some scheduling chaos with the event. Elliot smiled slightly. I hope the stay wasn't too chaotic. Vanessa's face didn't change. It wasn't until the second night. She motioned to the chair across from her. He sat. She didn't waste time. The heater didn't work the first night. The shower didn't drain the second. I reported both, but no one came until day 3. She waved that off. Minor stuff. We've been through worse. Then her voice dropped. But what bothered me, what's staying with me, was what happened to my daughter. Elliot leaned in. She's 12. She was sitting in the lobby by herself, waiting for me while I picked up dinner. A man, concierge maybe, told her she had to leave, that guests weren't allowed to loiter. She was a guest, Elliot said flatly. Vanessa nodded. He didn't ask, didn't check, just looked at her and decided she didn't belong. Elliot's stomach turned. Do you know who it was? White man, slim build, late 20s, dark tie, no name tag. Didn't give her a chance to speak. Vanessa sat back. She came back to the room confused. She thought she did something wrong. Elliot closed his eyes for a moment. I'm so sorry that happened. That's not just unacceptable, it's discriminatory. Vanessa studied him. I considered posting about it, the whole thing, but then yesterday morning I saw you working the buffet line. My daughter watched you refill the trays. She asked me, is he the boss? Vanessa smiled faintly. I told her, maybe, if we're lucky. Elliot nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me. I'll find out who it was and I'll handle it. Vanessa stood and extended her hand. Then I won't post anything, but please make sure no other child is made to feel like they don't belong. Not here. He shook her hand. She always will. That's a promise. As soon as she left, Elliot made his way to security. It didn't take long to confirm the timeline. The man on concierge duty that night was Chase, filling in for a colleague who had called out sick. Elliot requested the footage. There it was. The girl, small, quiet, scrolling through her phone, sitting politely on the couch. Chase approached. Arms crossed. He said something. She looked up, startled. A moment passed. Then she stood and walked outside. Confused. Alone. Elliot didn't wait. He headed to the employee locker room. Chase was there, sipping a protein shake, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when Elliot walked in. "You're Chase?" "Yeah. Can I help you?" Elliot stepped closer, voice low and direct. 2 nights ago, you told a 12-year-old girl to leave the lobby." Chase blinked. She wasn't a guest. She was. And even if she hadn't been, she was a child, not a threat. I didn't know who she was. You didn't ask. You assumed. And you made her feel like she didn't belong. I was just doing my job. "No," Elliot said, voice now sharp. "You were profiling a child." Chase straightened, defensive. "I didn't mean anything by it." "You don't have to mean harm to cause it," Elliot said, unwavering. "But now, you're responsible for it." "So what? I'm getting written up?" "No," Elliot said. "You're being terminated immediately." Chase's face hardened. "You're kidding." "I'm not. We do not tolerate discrimination. Ever." Chase didn't argue again. He shoved his things into his bag, muttered something under his breath, and left. Elliot returned to the lobby. Issa was checking in a family of 4, handling everything with her usual grace. When she finished, she turned toward him. "I saw Chase leave," she said quietly. "He won't be coming back." She didn't ask why. She didn't need to. By noon, the regional support team arrived. 2 people in navy polos and name badges, Valerie, who oversaw 3 other properties, and a clipboard-wielding man who barely spoke a word. Valerie looked around the lobby, eyebrows furrowed. "This is not what Rick described." "It's the truth," Elliot said. "We've got gaps in staffing. No floor manager and 2 guest complaints in 24 hours. Valerie didn't argue. She turned to her colleague. "I'll take kitchen and front desk. You handle housekeeping and facilities." By lunch, the assessments were in. 4 staff members working double shifts, 1 dishwasher under the legal working age, and a linen vendor threatening to cut supply due to unpaid invoices. Valerie's report ended with a dry line. "This place isn't managing. It's barely surviving." Elliot exhaled. "Can you cover the next 48 hours? "We'll rotate an temp GM, Valerie said. "But you need permanent leadership. Someone who listens." "I've already started looking." Valerie gave him a look that was less judgment and more warning. "This place could be great, but right now it's running on people too tired to speak up." Later that day, Issa found Elliot near the staff elevators. She asked if I'd consider assistant manager training, she said. Elliot turned. "What did you say?" I said yes. "But I want to stay on the floor. I'm not ready for a desk job." He smiled. "Good. You don't have to be." Issa hesitated. "You really think we can change this place?" Elliot looked around the buzzing lobby. "We already have." That night, Elliot stood outside the staff lounge and watched Mason pass by with a tray of silverware. He still looked tired, but something was different. A steadiness. A quiet focus. When Mason saw Elliot, he gave a small nod. Not of gratitude, but of something deeper. Recognition, the kind that says, "I see what you're doing." Elliot nodded back. Change wasn't coming. It was already here, and its name was Isa. The restaurant lights were dimmer than usual that evening, not by design, but from an aging circuit in the south corner that still hadn't been fixed. It cast a soft shadow across the floor, where the dinner shift buzzed with quiet determination. Not perfection, but progress. Elliot gathered the staff just before service, near the host stand where the smell of roasted garlic and grilled salmon drifted from the kitchen. No clipboard, no suit. Just him, still in borrowed slacks, sleeves, Rolled apron dusted with flour, the room fell still. I came here thinking we had a numbers problem, he began, voice steady but raw, that if the revenue targets looked right, the business must be fine. He looked around, meeting eyes one by one. I was wrong. Issa stood near the back, arms folded loosely. Mason leaned against the wall beside her, a rag tucked in his back pocket. Lee from the front desk nodded once, slowly. This wasn't about juice, Elliot continued, or policies, or even bad reviews. It was about people, being ignored, pushed too far, asked to carry weight no one saw. He took a breath. That ends tonight. A pause. He let the words land. We're bringing in more staff. I've already approved new equipment orders. The linen supplier's being paid first thing Monday, and most importantly, we start listening again. Not just to guests, but to you. Heads turned, faces softened. Mason, Elliot said. The boy looked up, eyes wide. No more double shifts, Elliot said gently. You stay in school, you stay a kid, that's your job. Mason didn't respond with words, just a small nod, tight but honest. Elliot looked around the circle. If you've got an idea, I want to hear it. If something breaks, we fix it. If someone disrespects you, guest or not, they don't belong here. Respect isn't a policy, it's a promise, and it starts with me. Silence. Then, slowly, someone clapped. Just once. Then again. Another followed. Then a few more. It wasn't loud. It wasn't choreographed. It wasn't celebration. It was solidarity, and that was enough. As the group broke and returned to their stations, Elliot stayed behind. He grabbed a tray, wiped down table 12, stacked plates, and refilled the napkin dispenser near the bar. The city lights glittered through the windows like small, distant truths. This wasn't over, not even close. But something had shifted. He wasn't proud. He wasn't even relieved. He was responsible, and he wasn't walking away again. It wasn't redemption. It was repair. But a repair this deep doesn't end with one shift. It starts with one, and the next test was coming sooner than anyone expected. Like if you believe one voice can change everything. Subscribe for part 2. The audit arrives.